The Air Force Lifecycle Management Center is one of 6 centers reporting to the Air Force Material Command. AFL-CMC is responsible for the total lifecycle management of Air Force weapon systems from their inception to retirement. It supports the Air Force mission through research, development, acquisitions, and product support of cutting-edge weapon systems and defense solutions for our men and women in uniform. I hope you enjoy this next panel on the weapon system digital transformation.
All right. Okay, welcome back. We're getting ready to start up with the next panel, which is going to be weapon system digital transformation. My name is Sean Lyman. I'll be your moderator for the panel this afternoon. We're very fortunate to have 3 guests who bring a diversity of experience to us, and we've done this on purpose. What we're going to do is take a look from an early engineering perspective in the acquisition process. We're going to look at a sustainment perspective, and then we're going to look in the middle where we look at a program office who's caught between those 2 paradigms of what do I do in early acquisition and how do I transition into sustainment. So we have with us Mr. Chris Garrett, who is the Senior Leader, Director of Systems Engineering for AFL-CMC, and he's also a Technical Director for the Air Force Digital Campaign. We have Mr. Ayers, who is the Senior Executive Service Member, who's the Director of Engineering for AFSC down at Warner Robins. And we have Dr. Jeff Kuhn, who's a logistics engineer working in the Strike Systems branch here at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So what we're going to do is a little bit different. We're going to tee this up, and we're going to have a question for each of our panel members to talk a little bit about the subject, and that'll tee up hopefully some thoughts within the audience for you to send in the questions. So with that, I would like to start with Mr. Garrett. We've had a lot of discussion today about Industry 4.0 and talking about digital transformation and changes. I would like to know, what is the Air Force doing, and what can you tell us about digital transformation in the Air Force in your efforts?
Yeah, for sure. So I can't remember, Sean, are we going to have slides or not?
You do have slides, and we have them
good.
up.
I didn't know if they were going to show up here.
If you look over there on the left.
Excellent. I was looking at the wrong monitor. So go ahead. As I answer that, I have a slide to answer your question. Go ahead and build this out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead and build it. I'm not going to spend, usually I can spend, I don't know, hours on this chart, but not today. I think we have, 5 minutes?
About 5 to 10.
So, and all I'm going to do is focus on that second column, because I'm going to leave the rest to, and I think one more build just for grins. Yeah. So I'm going to focus on that second column there, which starts off with the model-based system engineering, system architecture. That is an architecture of a system. And then below that, you can see it says own the reference architecture and model in the modern tools. So so the campaign is interested in this whole chart, Sean. But we have other speakers here. They're going to talk to different aspects of this chart. There's a couple of key points, and I know we've already talked. At the very bottom, you can see foundational elements, which I think have been mentioned a lot in this forum of Cloud One and Platform One, so I'm not going to talk about that. What I do want to talk, and I think also what I've heard is data architecture has been talked a lot about today, and I'm happy to answer more questions on that in regards to what it means for weapon system development data as opposed to maybe what we sometimes talk about as operational data. In this case, we're really talking about weapon system development data. And in that second column, one of the areas that I've been really focusing on is the viability and the means, as what many of the speakers have already talked about, that our chief talks about, which is truly getting capability to the field fast. And he says it accelerate, change, or lose. I say accelerate, change, or die. And so if you haven't read the press in the past year, please start reading the press, because we are facing a formidable adversary, and we must, talk about metrics, if you want to talk about, worldwide metrics and where we stand versus a country like China, please look at that and see. So we're deadly serious about getting capability to the field fast. We absolutely know that the digital approach is the way to do it. It does help us do key mechanisms like automation, which we must do, which we can only do by going to this new digital approach. And one of the ways I've been focusing on particularly is model-based system engineering, because as we try to ponder how are we going to in this future world, and there's literally thousands of issues that we could talk about on this chart, and I'm sure you've talked about some of those today. But one of the key issues, which I'll spend my few precious seconds left talking about is how do we exchange, two things actually. How do we exchange information with the contractor in a really rapid manner, which we don't do today? And then two, how do we get innovation everywhere? So how do we do that? Well, we certainly know, and all the contractors know, yes, that's data, yes, that's data rights, and it's always been amazing to me in my 30 plus years how well, for example, our prime contractors, no slam to them, I love them all, I love all contractors, but how well they manage their subs, right, which they do really well, mostly. There's a couple instances I can think about, but how well they manage their subs versus how well we as the government manage our primes. And I said to the worldwide somebody mentioned Major General Holt, who's one of my heroes. I mean, the guy is amazing. If you haven't heard him speak, he's amazing. And he invited me down about a month and a half ago to the Contracting Worldwide Conference in Orlando to speak on this chart and a bunch of other charts. And in the middle of that speech, I just kind of said, you know what, we aren't good customers in the Air Force. And so I got one of my 64 questions that I had to field from them was, why are we not good customers? And then one of the senior AQC person, excellent person, came up. We had a great conversation afterwards, and she said, why do you say that? And I said, well, I could tell you a lot of reasons on personal programs I've been on. I'll tell you one, we always cave. The government always cave, and I can just give you so many instances. And then like that next week, 2 weeks later, there was a good friend negotiating a big contract, and they caved. And so it's like, we always do that because the government really lacks the ability to leverage. And so this digital campaign and getting the right data rights and setting up the right models, which I don't have time, I could talk a long time about that, and certainly love to talk to you afterwards. But in setting up this structure as illustrated in this chart and getting the reference architectures, as we call them, which is, if you're not familiar with SysML, system modeling language, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, NASA, everybody I know is now moving to this approach to architecture systems, contain it in one model, not 30 or 50 high fidelity models, which we don't know how to run anyway for the most part. It's one model, and so we have a massive effort to train our workforce. We're stepping out this year, multi-millions of dollars we're putting into training, and so that's what we're going to do. And again, Sean, I don't have time to talk about all the blue arrows that connect the entire weapons system acquisition together, but that will be through a data architecture that we define. And with that, I will turn it over.
Well, sir, you actually have a few more charts. I think you have some time if you'd like to take a little deeper into
this.
I think it sets the stage.
All right, so thanks. So the next chart really gets to the point. Why SysML? Why MBSE? Well, I've already kind of hit on it. It's one model. So I can represent my whole system with one model, and groups like GBSD, LRSO, NGAD, SCARS, Navy program. I could give you a bunch of them that I'm working with at NavAir. The new ARTS contract, Advanced Radar Threat Simulator. I mean, I work with bunches of programs coast to coast. All of them now are stepping out building SysML MBSE models of their system. And so why is that so important? Why is that so cool? Well, it's important because in this world, using these modern tools like Cameo, Rhapsody, Sparks, whatever, MBS, Genesis, whatever tool you want to use, right? And the tools do vary, right? So certain ones have certain capabilities that others don't. So I don't want to just be simplistic and say all tools are the same, but I don't really want to talk about tools. I show some tools as representative of the fact that, hey, once you model your system, you now have the ability to interface that system to all these functions and analyses that we in the government want to do. So this chart is very parochial. I call it architecture in action because, hey, what I want is a model back from the contractor that I can then use to do cyber analysis. By the way, every single line on this chart has been done in the government in one way or the other, and mostly in very small ways. But there's no rocket science here. There's nothing, fantastic about, connecting a Cameo model to ASIM or using ANSYS tools or Assurant that the government has built in RYWA. There's nothing cosmic or, like I said, out of this earth doing this approach. We can do it. We're doing it today in pieces and parts. And so why is that so important? Well, it's important, one, for automation, and I'm convinced we have to have the largest degree of automation we can to go fast. And so I think somebody has once said, hey, have the human only do what the human can do. That's it. Only do what the human can do, and everything else automate. And frankly, I'm all for that. So is this very hard? This is unbelievably hard. I think Mr. Tom Fisher said this is way more revolutionary than when we got our computers on our desk, whenever you got it in 89, 90, or 91. Somewhere around there, you got a computer on your desk. At least I did, right? I don't know what it was.
Yeah, me too.
8088 or it was a Pentium 1, whatever it was. It was a computer on your desk, and we were all fascinated with it. This is way more revolutionary than that. Way more tools, way more connectivity, way more action going on in this chart. And so to change the culture, to get the data, I mean, we could spend so much time talking about new systems versus old system. The digital campaign under Tom Doyen is setting up an IP conference because we know the government does not have a lot of the data for our legacy systems. What are you going to do? Well, we got to figure that out. I mean, we know we got to figure that out, or a lot of this for legacy systems goes nowhere. So is that a bill to pay? Yeah, I think it is. I think it's a bill to pay. I think Tom knows that. That has to be teed up. The Air Force is going to have to resolve that for this to work out. And then, I mean, dare I go in and talk about the bottom there with PLM? Tons of issues with PLM. We still need to build reference architectures. We still needed to build this, what I also call an integrated digital environment. So as Dave Diaz likes to say, I think this is a 20-year journey. And I agree with him. He said that last year, so we say it's a 19-year journey.
Right.
And I honestly believe it is. But once we get there, we get innovation everywhere. So all small business, large business, any business I need, right, we'll be able to provide them the architecture, both the model and the data, clear and concise, so that they can now give me their algorithm, their sensor, whatever they need that I need, they can give it to me. And I can run through these analysis really fast. And when issues come up, I can resolve them. I can get back to the budgeteers. I can show clearly the staffers in Congress the implications. So it's a good world we're headed. We're on the right path. It's a long time, but this is why what I said earlier with that second column, MBSE, is so important, because I don't know any other way to do this than where we've landed. So hopefully that helps.
Yep. You did have one more chart on integration. So basically, just to capture what I think you're saying is the model-based systems engineering focus area in the acquisition process is where we're driving right now.
For sure.
We're driving all of our acquisition programs to that approach.
We absolutely are, and numerous ones in the Army, Navy, Air Force are stepping out to do it.
Okay.
You'll see that in contracts today across the board, and NASA, for sure.
Okay. Is there anything you'd like to say on your last?
Yeah, so that build, I think this builds, right? If you go ahead and build, so go ahead and build it out. I mean, this builds because what happens is, right, we're all head down, whether you're in an organization as an airworthiness person or a software person, or whether you're at AFSC or LCMC or TESS, wherever you're at, right, your head's down, you're doing your thing. And what this new, integrated digital environment, this ecosystem that we're moving to, that we want to put in the lab, in test, at the sustainment center, so we all can be on the same sheet of music. And clearly, right, IT, which I'm not even going to touch with a 10-foot pole, right, IT is a huge part of that the Air Force will resolve and work over the next 19 years.
Great. Next 19 years. Okay, so that's a look up front in the acquisition piece, and obviously model-based systems engineering is foundational. The Air Force and the rest of the department is committed there. But now I would like Mr. Air to talk to us. As we do that, that's occurring in the acquisition programs, what's that mean to you in the sustainment center and the works you're doing? Because I know you're not sitting waiting for something to get thrown over the fence. So would you like to talk to us a little bit about what your efforts are on the AFSC side of the house, sir?
Yeah, so I'll delve quickly, hopefully, into our digital transformation. Of course, the Sustainment Center has the mission of overseeing the 3 Air Force depots as well as our supply chain. So we have to have the same concerns and technical capability that LCMC has in the model-based systems engineering environment. Plus, we've got to deploy Industry 4.0 concurrently. So next slide, please. So our Air Force depots comprise of about 32,000 personnel, They go back to the 40s. The manufacturing technologies that we use span that entire period of time. So I'm doing manufacturing technologies from the late 40s all the way up to present day low observable manufacturing materials and such at one of our ALCs. So I've got to span all of those. And Industry 4.0 provides the challenge of we're no longer going to air gap our equipment. I mean, we have a lot of modern CNC equipment, just as you'll see at any manufacturing facility here in the U.S. But I'll say with a lot of confidence, none of it is connected to a network because we just haven't been able to address that IT aspect. I mean, we have little small networks to tie the control computer to the CNC equipment, but that's as far connectivity-wise as we've been able to move. So we're on a path to integrating our operational technology, the equipment on the shop floor, bringing new sensors, new capabilities into the commodity overhaul environment, manufacturing, supply chain. You know, we want to build out an intelligent supply chain areas within our ALCs. So upgrading the warehouses, working with DLA to drive that kind of intelligent integration. Next slide. So as far as Industry 4.0, you know, it's a smart, I like to call it an intelligent digital depot. And you know, we see it as an avenue to overcome many of the constraints that we deal with today. Production delays because we're in a mode of reactive management for equipment issues. So being able to deploy condition-based maintenance that's based on sensor information, doing prognostics instead of ongoing diagnostics, and forecasting downtime when we can afford to take the equipment down. You know, we want to drive our equipment availability up over 90%. I mean, today our CNC equipment's in the low 60% on average, which still isn't bad, but it's a long way away from 90%. Today we have the inability to access our machine data for analysis and usage outside of those standalone enclaves. You know, we have some technicians that take it upon themselves to download the data and go analyze it and really improve the maintenance capability. But we need to standardize how we're doing that. We have delayed repairs because we can't collaborate across equipment. So if I have the exact same CNC equipment at Robins Air Force Base as I do at Tinker, that does not mean that I can make the part at Robins that they were trying to make at Tinker and the machine went down. There are data collaboration issues associated with that. You can have a different PLC configuration at one site versus the other, and so it's really a challenge for us to create a cross-collaborative workload and to treat our repair environment as a single enterprise. I'm not going to go into all the bullets. Next slide, in the interest of time. So right now, looking at FY22 and on, our number one priority is our digital transformation. Coming along with that is the workforce development and training to train folks on Industry 4.0. Your technician workforce and the skills and understanding of that technology is night and day against just being smart on an individual piece of equipment. We've got to teach them architectures, we've got to teach them IT solutions, cyber resiliency. I mean, the weak link in our Industry 4.0 deployment is probably going to be the human in the loop and the vulnerabilities that they unintentionally introduce. They click on the wrong link on an email or whatever, and now we've got a Stuxnet-like issue. We've got to deploy our Air Force PLM and OPV, our Operational Platform Visualization tool. And we're currently working to bring our GEDMIX data into the PLM environment, drive towards a data architecture standardization so that our various PLM instances can actually talk to one another. You know, the challenge that we have in the Sustainment Center is if I have 30 weapon systems out there and they have 30 different PLM instances, I have to be able to use all of them. So how do you cross-integrate across all 30 instances? Because I have to have access to all the data so that I can manufacture, I can repair, I can procure components for the supply system. So we're driving towards a higher level model-based environment deployment. Foundationally, it's MBSE at its heart, but I've got to pull it up to the next level. So for instance, you take a CNC equipment. I've got to do platform to process MBSE. So the platform is the CNC equipment. The process is what is that manufacturing process that you're trying to execute. Then I've got to do process to platform, to instance. And so taking that process and defining the manufacturing instance. So is it a C5 floorboard that's going to take a monumental amount of square footage to handle, or is it a floorboard off an F-15? Because that drives my facility space constraints. It drives HVAC, it drives power. And each of those SysML integrations are different because the civil engineering community wants a different data set than does the manufacturing process engineer. So driving towards that MBE environment, we've already begun defining our government reference architecture for the manufacturing processes. We've defined thus far 3 different technology stacks associated with our reverse engineering environments. One was LRU redesign, another was structural component manufacturing. Deployment of our Industry 4.0 IoT platform is upcoming. Our RFI is currently out on the street from our CITO. Deployment right now is forecasted at FY24. So we got a lot of work to do, a source selection ahead of us, a lot of training and education of the workforce. Of course, our network infrastructure upgrades are ongoing. And then the topic that I've begun socializing with folks is high-performance computing impacts and the influence. So how much computing power am I going to put at the edge? And then how much am I going to have in the cloud or the fog, depending on how you want to integrate, because it's hybrid? Do I need to bring a supercomputer into the Sustainment Center to process all the IoT data? Because we're going to generate terabytes and terabytes of data daily that I'm going to need to process. So bringing AI and ML to bear, and then robotic process automation. So we are deploying industrial robots across AFSC. And at Robbins, for instance, we currently have 44 different robots in use across 26 processes, soon to be 66 robots. So there's that aspect of actual robotic process automation. And then there's bots on the IT side, which we need as well in the Sustainment Center. I need bots, unattended bots, running on supply data so that it can clean the data up before it goes into my logistics systems, as one example. So how do we get at that? So a lot of different issues as we drive the integration. Digital twin and digital thread. Driving the digital thread down to the point of maintenance is important for the Sustainment Center, so we have connectivity from work control documents into the PLM system and the authoritative source of truth. So a lot more I could go on and on. Cyber resiliency obviously is a threat for us. So how do we build out that zero trust cyber resilient environment? So I probably took way more time than I needed, or should have, excuse me. But these are the things that we are dealing with within the Sustainment Center that we're going to get at over the next 2 to 3 years.
I think that's important. I think it's important for our audience too to understand some of the needs of the Sustainment Center and how industry can help things looking forward. Dr. Kuhn, you're kind of in the middle of this. You're in a program office right now trying to deal with the early MBSE as well as planning for how I'm going to integrate with the Sustainment Center. Can you share some of your interest in there?
just to start off with, I'd kind of like to draw a circle around the problem set of things we're working. And you're going to hear a lot of overlap of the things that you've already heard up here on the stage and earlier today. So what we're looking at is really on the weapon system fielding side, standing up, sustaining program office on a time frame from minute zero. So like the A-10s of the world going through re-winging, one of the leads in how the Air Force is working to do the PLM solution. So Rich Billings and his team out here, they're fielding today, right? And then you work through some of the other weapon systems that are currently in the later acquisition cycle. So CRH is in there, T7 is in there. There's some other weapon systems that are going to be coming on in the next, 8 to 10 year range perhaps, and they'll need a sustaining program office, and then a little bit farther out, GBSD and some of the other weapon systems. So of everything that you've heard today and coming tomorrow, as we're looking at standing up a sustaining program office in say 0 to 10 years, right? And all those functions that need to happen. I need to keep a weapon system airworthy. I need to keep fleet and individual tail numbers under configuration control and configuration management. I've got to have engineering support across all my systems. I need to be able to interface with the supply side to make sure our supply chain is up and going, so my cap list stays low. And then you take those activities that need to happen and you overlay that with how the Air Force has changed how we've wanted to do business over the last 50 years, from highly organic 50 years ago to what are you talking about, program office, you want to do this, we just write checks for that, to hey, we're trying to pull this back into the program office. So another hurdle, right? Everybody gets to appreciate my problems, right? So as we work to pull some of these activities back in, whether it's even support of the integrity programs, ASIP, MEXIP, AVIP, all those things, not only we're talking about trying to do that from a organic perspective, we're talking about doing it in a way that's probably 3 to 4 generations that industry has passed us, to then try to bring that on board into a government-run sustaining program office. And it's not just that, it's business processes, it's tools, it's infrastructure, it's data flows. Any of those things you can apply digital transformation to, right? You can throw those words at any of those. Well, can't do it all, right? So what can we do? What are we going to do starting like minute zero, right? So we've been out with Rich Billings a lot trying to work through the PLM side of the house. Team Center, great product, very powerful, can do an amazing amount of things, extremely intricate, can be configured in infinite numbers of ways. And like you said, sir, if we go run off and make individual Team Center stovepipes, we're just causing the same problem we've had historically, right? So I'm advocating, knock on wood, whatever it is, amongst some of the things we need is an overarching, reference architecture at a high level. I get it, at some point they get so high they get useless, but kind of a combination of reference architecture and usage guide, right? When you get into Team Center and you get into Spark's Enterprise Architect and all those things and those powerful tools that are infinitely configurable, they can do 10 million things, great, love it. What are the 10,000 things we're going to use it for? And actually get down into the data element definition, the actual attributes that go to those data elements. Not all of them, but the ones that cross enterprises. I know that I'm going to have, God love them, Billy out there turning a wrench on an airplane somewhere, and there's been a repair made on something that will need to flow into a sustaining program office. It will probably need to flow into AFSC. Well, we should be able to identify what those types of data elements are, flesh them out pretty well so our PLMs can talk, right? That is some of the higher level guidance that I think we could use. I understand standards and innovation exist on opposite ends of a spectrum. I get that, but I think there's some intermediate work we can do as we really need to take 3-generational leap. There's no way to go back, right? The data package we're looking at, mill standard 31,000. It can't. 2D drawings into GEDMix. It's more money to make that happen to then put it into GEDMix for something we can't use, right? So that is obviously not a solution we can be in anymore. So what we've been trying to do on our side, since the field is so broad and you can digitally transform anything, we're really trying to work through the activity decompositions of the sustaining program office, amongst other things. We've modeled this off some work we did concerning condition-based maintenance planning. I was with the Rapid Sustainment Office for about a year, leading there. Okay, what does condition-based maintenance planning for the Air Force look like in the future? They're fighting the bad data fight, right, with the current weapon systems right now. Okay, let's jump to 2035. Let's say we've got the new data coming in from some of these things that have come online. What processes, flows do we want? And what we found was, the things that matter are the things that matter most. Let me revise and extend. Things that matter most are the data and information flows that cross enterprises right now. So the things that I know need to go from the flight line combat command to a sustaining program office, AFMC, to supply support, AFSC, and not only are those links now not very good between the enterprises, they're all broke within. So my recommendation would be that's where we start, is start working those cross-enterprise things first. Let each enterprise work in their, what they need to do on their side. Great, love it, go have fun, and we'll work the cross together. So I know that's a lot of random Jeffisms.
We have a couple questions from the audience. Why don't we take a couple questions and we can come back if time permits. First one we have, and perhaps Mr. Garrett, this might be directed at you, but anybody has. Are we partnering with digital twin experts like McLaren to replicate the success they've seen in digital engineering space, if you're familiar with any of that?
So we've definitely talked to them, and HP's been a big part of what they've done, right? So how deep does that conversation go? I've personally met with them for, 2.5 or so hours once. Great engaging conversation. And there's some lessons to be learned, but as Jeff and Wayne has talked about, and McLaren is complicated, right? I don't want to belittle that, but holy smoke, when I started interrogating them, I'm like, that's very cool. You guys are doing some cool stuff, no doubt. But wow, I think I personally think our problems are like an order of magnitude bigger and harder. But there's no doubt, not only McLaren, but there's plenty of companies out there that are tackling this that we're working with. But as we said, I think we understand the technical issues, honestly. I think the problem is, again, as these two gentlemen particularly have talked about, we have just a massive cultural issue, organizational issue that is preventing us from doing the wonderful stuff that McLaren and others, by the way, they've done great stuff, no doubt, but others have done great stuff too. So yes, I think we've hit a lot of companies doing wonderful digital twin kind of concepts, and I think we appreciate them. I appreciate their engagements. No doubt, I do. I think that I think we've kind of cornered the technical issues, and like I said, I think the other issues are just killing us.
So I'd like to add that I believe our digital transformation Air Force-wide and the concurrent Industry 4.0 has to be instantiated into our STEM outreach within the U.S. as well. This isn't something only the Air Force is pursuing. All of industry across the U.S. is pursuing Industry 4.0, pursuing digital transformation. So, and I know our kids, they expect IoT kind of devices, right? So, the training and education in high school, tech schools, technical colleges, and such should have all of this incorporated into it. Our engineers coming out of our universities, scientists as well, should have courses and training on this as well. Yes, we have a huge cultural change to make within the Air Force, but I got to make sure that the folks that I'm getting straight out of school in the future already are up to speed, so that I'm not having to bring them online as well. So that's true for my technician workforce as well as my engineers. AFSC is working with academia and industry to get at this as well. And the work needs to be done here in Dayton. It needs to be done at all of our major Air Force sites where we have major concentrations of scientists and engineers.
Yeah, you mentioned something about what AFSC is doing. I think you have some initiatives right now to actually work closely with the universities to try to get that talent to come into the government to be able to posture for Industry 4.0. So that's a true challenge across all of the government. Look at the salary structure. We can offer a highly trained, fully skilled person $52,000 a year to come work for the United States Air Force. It's hard to get the top talent to come in and do that. It takes a commitment to changing the Air Force. That's when I had that discussion with some of our friends in the uniform, I had that recently, and they said, what are we doing to attract top talent? But I look at my friends in uniform, and I see an officer sitting back there. You're committed to the Air Force. You're not doing this to get rich. You're doing this because you're committed to serving your country. It's the things we were talking about earlier. It's a higher calling to be part of the Air Force. And so we have to look to that and look to pull our folks into us and to work for our AFSC and LCMC. They're looking to make a difference in protecting our country and be able to implement these things. That's something that's a challenge to us, but it's something we do strive to reach out and do. So, another question, Mr. Garrett, as model-based systems engineering matures, SysML is also increasing interoperability with SysML 2.0 release. Is the Air Force looking to SysML 2.0?
I mean, absolutely, right? I mean, we talk to people, Dr. Peak at Georgia Tech, I mean, MITRE's doing this, aerospace, John Hopkins. So some small companies that we know of definitely are keeping track of 2.0. We're doing the Kentucky windage and when it's coming out. I've heard 2 years, 2 months. I seriously doubt it's 2 months, right? I mean, so I think it is a ways down there from what I hear. If anybody has more knowledge here, please tell me. I'd like to know that. Just talking about that this morning, by the way. So yeah, we're looking forward to 2.0 for all the advances there, particularly hopefully interoperability is what we're seeing. But it's definitely going to be a change. So as we were talking about it this morning, right, we're like, okay, we're investing a lot of money. We just got a lot of money this year to me, meaning over $1 million to start helping buy tools to get into the Air Force, train people on SysML today, which I forget, what is it, 1.6? I forget the current version. I'm not steeped in it. But the idea is we're going to go train all these people. And even though 2.0, I'm convinced, right, from the words I'm getting back are going to be better, now I'm going to have to go, right, get all new licenses for all these tools. I know it's inevitable. Whoever asked that question is very timely because I was just kind of scratching my head this morning. It's like, all right, we're going to go out, but that's what happens, right? Tools do change and standards do change. And in the Air Force, somebody said this, but right, on this panel, I mean, we are catching up. I forget who said we're 10 years behind, 20 years, probably depends. Yeah, I think we're definitely at least 10 years in many places, probably up to 20 years behind, what a lot of industry is doing. So we have a big catch-up game, and we bemoan this and talk about this all the time, but my point is, let's just start now, right? Let's start now and quit kicking the can down the road. And so I think with the country's always responded to imperatives and to, big issues, which we have. Again, as I said, if you haven't been reading the paper, we have big issues out there. And so I'm very convinced the Air Force, like the government, is slow to change. But so when I look at the PALM this year that we did our investments, right, I go, I'm not very happy with that. But the Air Force process is slow to change. So we're going to get on this. This is a long journey, and certainly all the great feedback the industry can give us, we desperately need and want.
That's great. Let's see, there's another question here. What are the Air Force plans for developing and deploying a usable data fabric? Is that something that...
Wow, can't believe that was brought up.
They teed you up on that.
Yeah, they teed me up. So this AFSC right now has begun a technology demonstration of a data fabric. the technology demonstration is going to span many different, and I consider software technology, by the way. So many different software technologies. Blockchain, of course, is one of them. Building out a zero trust, cyber resilient environment. Being able to deploy bots, attended and unattended bots as well. Driving towards modern business systems and business intelligence, excuse me. So there's data visualization, part of it's got to be deployed, artificial intelligence and machine learning in our supply chain management environment. You know, AFSC recently stood up in the last year and a half a data science flight within our supply chain. So data scientists are an important future knowledge area for AFSC and for the broader Air Force, because I know they've brought data scientists into our headquarters as well. So yes, we need to catch up, but I honestly believe we're catching up quickly. You know, if you look at the broader Air Force, there are moves underway to deploy a broader data fabric with hundreds of Air Force systems within that fabric. You know, the work that we're doing within AFSC is not intended to be a separate system, if you will, at the end of the day. It's intended to allow us to adopt early, because I don't want to have to wait for the broader fabric work to get finished and then bring my data scientists to the table, bring the systems into that fabric that I'm interested in to figure out how to write the apps and such. Because today when I say I want to do a new type of analysis, invariably there's some data element that I don't currently collect in the origin system that I think I'm going to do the analysis on. And so invariably, you end up talking about the systems instead of the data. And the data fabric breaks that paradigm. If we can expose while protect all of our data in I'll say a single area, that wouldn't be smart to have it all in one area, but less than hundreds of areas like we have today, right? We can do CBM analysis that we've never been able to do before because we can once and for all see all the different data types that are already being captured in these disparate systems. So that's kind of the vision for the data fabric and what we're pursuing. You know, the broader programs at the SAF-CN level, and you know, we're looking forward to taking advantage of it once it's online.
We have a couple minutes left. I have one more question, and I'll throw this to you, Dr. Kuhn, and let you guys. This one's it's a hard one, and if we had an answer, we wouldn't be all sitting up here. How do you change the culture? We've been talking about culture change forever. We've been talking about accelerate, change, or lose, or in your case, accelerate, change, or die. There's clearly an imperative for us to change right now. How do we do that, and what are some thoughts on that?
Yeah, so a couple of thoughts. I think we've got to take a very focused look on what we want to do from an activity perspective, activity decomp, and then work through how we're going to do it in these different ways, right? So you take, for example, you know, an engineering structural analysis on a weapon system. You know, back when little Captain Jeff Kuhn was running around, I used to walk up to a Lectriever in the C-130 program office that had blue mimeographed papers dated 54, right, for stress analysis. How do we prove to our now, you know, old Jeff that doesn't want to put all his eggs in an electronic turn on your computer basket? How do we convince old Jeff now that we still have the resiliency that I used to have when I used to walk into the bay every day and go, yep, Lectriever's still there. We should have an okay day, right? So I think it is focused demonstrations, using a a defined use case thread all the way through. I now know I can get data from my flight line into my program office that changes the PLM structure of my by tail number instantiation here in a way that I can now give to the PDM line, so they know, hey, by the way, I got a repair right there, so we're gonna have to design around another kit and make all that stuff happen. So there's a thread that I think if we can map the critical use cases like that out across our enterprises, I think we can make a lot of money in convincing people, because along with the grumpy depot engineers, you also, especially on the condition-based maintenance side, you have the grumpy chief master sergeants that say recreational maintenance all the time, right? So you got to convince those guys that we're not out there just changing parts to change parts. So how do you draw those use cases through to convince them that we are really prepared enough, and our processes, analyses, models, information flows, data flows are robust enough for our weapons systems to continue to go out and kill bad guys and break their stuff.
Well, let me ask the senior grumpy depot engineer over there. Do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I do. From a modernization perspective, of course, training education, that has to be at the heart of the cultural change, but driving excitement in the change. It's a quality of life change for our folks. We're all accustomed to apps on our phone and just the amount of data that you're able to stream. One of the capabilities that a data fabric provides is an environment where these low-code, no-code kind of applications can very quickly be built out. So how do we build out app stores in the Air Force that people have taken personal ownership in building out those specific tools? And I'm always asked, well, why would they do that? Well, if you saw how many pockets of what I call feed the beast area there are, where multiple weeks out of the month, it is manually take data out of one system, put it into a really awesome spreadsheet that I would never want to have to build, that has 10, 15 pivot tables in it, to provide senior leadership with the information they need to actually make the decisions that keep our Air Force flying, fighting, and winning. That can all be done much more seamlessly, much easier with an environment that has bots active in it to move the data around, to clean it up, and to drive to modern data visualization tools so that our senior leadership always has the most current data available to them. Doesn't have a latency of 3 to 5 weeks, depending on what kind of data it is. Maybe it's only 2 days. We've never had that. So, that's the kind of excitement that our data scientists are experiencing. There's little wins along the way, and we're going to have to just get started, as we said earlier, and move forward.
Mr. Garrett, any final thoughts to wrap us up?
I agree with these comments wholeheartedly, and I would say that maybe the other piece we haven't mentioned is leadership. And I think, I work with General Bunch now a good bit, Tom Fisher, Jackie Jennings Last, General Schmidt, General Collins, General Tempo. I guess I could try to go down the list here. We got a bunch of leaders in the Air Force that now understand this. We have massive problems, as you guys know, with IT, with getting funding right now. So we're going very slow right now, stumbling along like we do on any massive revolution, but we're definitely headed in the right direction, and it's going to take us a while, I think, to get that mo going, but we have really great leadership now that understands it. Trying to get the funding in place is difficult in the corporate process. I think we're going to get there for sure. I know we're going to get there because we have to do this, and so I think that's maybe the other piece that we, is leadership, and I think we have the leadership. It's just, leadership has to deal inside the system too. General Bunch just can't say, so be it. He didn't get that prerogative, but he's definitely carrying the mantle for us, along with a bunch of other generals and SESs I didn't mention. So I'm excited. I am excited.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you guys coming out and spending time with us today. With that, it's time for a break, and appreciate everybody's support.